9 Detroit Red Wings players are entering the final year of their contracts. The team's captain has requested a trade and hasn't backed off it in over 4 months. And the front office doesn't even have a general manager to sort it all out. Let's start with the biggest story hanging over this franchise. Dylan Larkin asked to be traded, and he hasn't changed his mind since. Here's how it started. Larkin's agent called the team shortly after the season ended, and then followed up with a specific list of teams the captain would be willing to waive his no-trade clause for. Former general manager Steve Yzerman addressed it publicly for the first time at the draft, saying, "Shortly after the season, I received a phone call from Dylan Larkin's agent, informing me that Dylan would like to be traded. A week or so after that, Dylan's agent followed up with a short list of teams that Dylan would consider waiving his no-trade to go to. Larkin has 5 years remaining on an 8-year, $69.9 million contract he signed back in March of 2023. He's been the team's captain since January of 2021, wearing the same letter Yzerman once wore as a player for this franchise. But in a decade with Detroit, he's played in exactly 5 playoff games, all of them coming in his rookie season. The Red Wings have missed the postseason for straight years now, the longest active drought in the entire NHL, and that context explains a lot about why their captain wants a fresh start elsewhere. What makes this situation even more complicated is the timing. Yzerman himself was moved out of the general manager chair and into a senior advisor role, with assistant GM Sean Horkoff currently handling day-to-day duties. Detroit has hired an outside search firm to find a permanent replacement. Some around the league wondered if removing Yzerman might change Larkin's mind, since there had reportedly been tension between the two of them. That has not happened. As of mid-August, Larkin's stance hasn't moved an inch, so which teams are actually involved here? Reporting has connected Detroit to conversations with the Panthers, the Wild, the Golden Knights, and the Stars regarding Larkin. Minnesota in particular has been described as hopeful about landing him, with their beat reporter indicating the Wild still want to make a move once Detroit finally names a new general manager. But here's the sticking point, and it's a big one. Detroit isn't interested in stripping this down for picks and prospects. The organization wants NHL-ready talent coming back in any deal involving their captain. That's a significant asking price for a 30-year-old center, even one as productive and well-liked in the room as Larkin has been throughout his career. It also means this doesn't get resolved quickly or cheaply, no matter how badly either side might want a deal done. Training camp is approaching fast, and there's still no resolution in sight. That creates a genuinely awkward scenario. If nothing changes before camp opens, Larkin walks back into a locker room where every single teammate is aware he tried to leave. For a captain, that's not a small thing. Chemistry and leadership dynamics inside a room are hard enough to manage without that kind of tension sitting at the background, and it's a storyline worth watching closely once players start reporting in September. One factor working in Detroit's favor throughout all of this is money. The organization currently sits on more available cap space than any other team in the league, over $19 million worth. If Larkin does eventually get moved, that number climbs even higher, giving whoever takes over as general manager serious flexibility to reshape this roster regardless of how the Larkin situation resolves. Larkin isn't the only name Red Wings fans need to be tracking this year. 9 total players on this roster are entering the final season of their current contracts, and that group includes some genuinely important pieces. Alex DeBrincat sits at the top of that list. He led the entire Detroit roster in both goals and points last season, making him the most significant name heading toward unrestricted free agency next summer. Behind him, defenseman Justin Falk, goaltender John Gibson, forward Andrew Kopp, and goaltender Daniil Tarasov are all in the same boat, each entering a contract year with their long-term futures in Detroit unclear. Falk specifically has drawn trade speculation. He's entering the 5th season of a 7-year deal worth $45.5 million, carrying a $6.5 million cap hit. The thinking here connects directly to the pipeline behind him. Prospect Axel Sandin-Pellikka is expected to step into the lineup this season, likely on the 3rd pairing, and that kind of young depth gives the organization the flexibility to consider moving off Falk's money if the return fits their timeline better than keeping a veteran rental around. Falk's fate may ultimately come down to how the season starts. A rough opening stretch could make trading him this year the obvious call, especially with a rebuild-adjacent mindset potentially setting in depending on how the Larkin situation plays out. If Detroit ends up softening its asking price to finally move its captain, that same kind of approach, bringing back younger assets rather than holding out for a perfect package, could easily extend to how they handle Falk as well. Now let's talk about the crease, because it's just as unsettled as the blue line. John Gibson actually had a solid year in net for Detroit. He posted a 2.72 goals against average and a 901 save percentage, numbers that suggest he's still capable of handling a starter's workload even as he approaches his contract year. That production is part of why the expectation around the league is different for Gibson compared to Falk. Rather than being shipped out, he may actually earn a short-term extension to stay in Detroit. The reasoning behind that comes down to what's waiting behind him. Prospect Trey Augustine is considered one of the best young goaltenders in the organization, ranked as high as the #2 prospect in Detroit's entire system. But he's only appeared in 2 AHL games so far, which means he's almost certainly not ready to take over a starting job at the NHL level by 2027. The far more realistic path has Augustine spending a full season developing in the minors, then stepping in as Gibson's backup once he's ready, rather than being thrown straight into the deep end. That timeline creates a domino effect for the current backup situation. If Augustine is ticketed for that backup role down the line, it likely means Daniil Tarasov, who's currently splitting time behind Gibson, ends up moving on from Detroit once his contract runs out next summer. None of this happens in isolation. Every goaltending decision here connects back to how quickly Augustine develops and how well Gibson performs in what could be a pivotal, extension-deciding season. Step back and look at the full picture, and you can see why this Detroit offseason has been described as turbulent. A captain who wants out and hasn't budged. A front office currently missing its top decision-maker. 9 players entering contract years, including a top scorer, a veteran defenseman drawing trade buzz, and 2 goaltenders with very different outlooks attached to their futures. What ties all of it together is timing. Every one of these situations, Larkin's trade request, Falk's contract year, the goaltending transition, is set to come to a head around the same period, right as camp opens and the season begins. Whoever Detroit hires as their next general manager is stepping into a roster with more moving parts than almost any other team in the league heading into opening night. The silver lining, if there is one, is the financial flexibility. With more cap space available than any other franchise in the NHL, Detroit has the resources to be aggressive no matter which direction they take with Larkin, Falk, or their crease. Whether that turns into a genuine step forward or just adds more uncertainty to an already complicated situation will start to become clear once training camp opens and real decisions have to get made instead of just discussed. Here's what we know for certain. Dylan Larkin requested a trade back in April and hasn't wavered since. Detroit has talked with multiple contending teams but wants NHL-ready talent in return. 9 players are entering contract years, headlined by Alex DeBrincat, with Justin Falk drawing trade speculation and the goaltending picture set to shift as well.